Hey there, and happy Saturday. It's Saturday morning here in Daytona, and we are going to finish this barn painting. I'll finish it up today and have it posted by Sunday morning for you to be able to work on. I'm not quite sure what we'll start on Tuesday. I was thinking about something from the sugar mill ruins. I have to go through my photos and see if there's something I want to do in watercolor there. When I'm not with you guys working on these videos, my art time is now being spent trying to figure out oils a little bit. I took a great plein air workshop while I was home, and the instructor and all the other students worked in oil, and while I did really great paintings in acrylic, I was fascinated, and I'm thinking I want to give it a try. All right, let's look at where we are. Here is the photo of the barn. Oh, sorry about the table saw. Hope it's not too loud. So we have the barn. I had an accident during the last video recording. I didn't realize that I was recording me and not painting the red on the barn. So apologies. Honestly, it's a pretty straightforward wash. We can add some detail and some speckling later, but if you can get in there with a red and have a little bit of water in the middle to show it getting a little bit lighter in the middle, it's darker under the roof line and again where it hits the ground. That color should be mostly alizarin crimson, and you can have a little cadmium red so that you can do a little warm and cool, wet into wet on the barn. Here is what that looks like as far as I have done. I'll probably come in with some white gouache and clean a few things up later, but the barn itself is in pretty good shape. We're going to work over here. This mountain, which remember in my drawing I brought down here below the roof line. I didn't like the mountain diving right into the roof. It's going to be cool. It's going to get a little bit darker and then into warm. And I think we'll bring the warm in to down here a little bit darker, and having that driveway or whatever it is that I put in be a little bit stay lighter. So we're going to do this, 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 and any details. As I knock everything over. All right. Here we go. Grabbing a number 14 Ulyssev from Rosemary Brushes. I'm reactivating the blue, purpley blue that's on my palette and adding a little bit of teal to it. I think I'll add a little bit of orange to neutralize it and dull it down. There, I think we've got a nice color. And then I'm going to activate some alizarin crimson on my palette so I have something to drop in there just for interest. Always good to have a couple of colors ready to go on your palette so that you don't have to mix them while you go. And I'm going to go a tad darker on the mountain. I want it to stand out from the lighter part of the sky. Once I get around the building, I'll be good. I won't have to worry too much. Be a little careful there. I'm leaving a little white between the mountain and the barn because there actually is a little white on the edge of that barn. Now, continuing our bead. See, I dropped in some of that red there. And I'm not afraid to keep a few spots of white in this wash because there's still a little early spring snow on the hill that has not gone away yet. Now I'm grabbing clean water in my brush and just fading that blue down as we get closer to the horizon. Alright, now I'm going to pick up some warm color as we get to the horizon. Go right into that water. We've got a nice little chance for a two-color transition there. I'm going to deepen this warm up a little bit with a little yellow ochre gold from Cheap Joe's, and just wet it right into the horizon there. It'll be soft trees. Just like that. And I think we need to go a bit darker on that, but I don't want it to go too warm, so I'm going to throw some blue into some burnt sienna right at the horizon line. Drop in these wet into wet marks. And then because the bottom is dry instead of wet, where the wet is running up and making those soft tree shapes in the distance, you have a chance to do some hard edges like the tops of grasses at the bottom. Just break up that line so it's not a straight line. There's no straight lines in nature, very few at least. And then you don't want all of these to be hard, so clean out your brush, dry it out mostly in your paper towel, and then come pick one or two spots where you want to soften up that edge. When you can get soft and hard edges at the same time, you're really, really working it. I'm going to let that mountain dry, but I feel like I want it to be darker. So we're probably going to come back. I'm going to mix up some fresh yellow ochre gold, and I've still got that blue active on the palette. And I'm going to come in here and get the paint loaded up on my brush and then blot a lot of it out and come in and do some dry brushing. Let's get some texture going in these high grasses, and you can use the yellow ochre gold, mix it with a little bit of purple. Again, it's another chance to break up the line. You want to get this area darker. I'm leaving little bits of unpainted area and shifting it to a little bit more of a purple color to give it some interest. Making a kind of a lacy pattern there. I'm getting a little bit darker as I pull away down this little hill. Again, here's a chance to go paint negative to get the shapes of some blades of grass here that are at the edge of this little drive that we're making. While this is wet, I'm going to drop some more of that purple right in, and I can also bring it right up to the barn and make it be those cracks in the bottom of the barn boards. This is just a tad dark here. I'm just going to take my brush and drop it and pull out some of that color. We want some of this dark, and I'm just taking some purple that's on my palette and that yellow ochre gold, and do the same thing over here. Make the distressed bottom bits of the barn wood. I need to go a little bit thicker yet. Boy, we're getting real close. I'm going to take some of that yellow ochre gold that I had mixed up. You can use yellow ochre. Any warm, earthy kind of tone is fine as long as it's not too dark. And I'm throwing a little bit of purple in it. And I'm just going to do some mark making here. Hold by the end of the brush and just come in and do a little tip tap. And then come in with your brush and knock it back. You just want to make some interesting marks that will read as grass without actually having to paint blade by blade. Alright, I'm going to get a smaller brush, and I'm going to get just pull up all the different colors that are on my palette. So there's some blue and some purple and some warm. And I'm going to put some spatters in here. Be careful and not have them go where you don't want them to. But my goal here is also to get some spatters on the barn itself. What else do we want to do? So we have that tree to put in. Let's work on that. That's probably still wet. I don't want to do that yet. So let's look at some values that we might want to correct. So I've got a little indigo, a little diox purple, some warm. I'm going to come in here and I want to make sure that I get this corner here nice and dark. I can also paint some of these board lines. And that barn door throws a shadow, so that's an important bit to get in there. I want to come in under the eaves and restate them. One more time, and dry out the brush and just grab one or two spots to soften. I think the roof needs a little bit more warm. We're going to grab that cadmium red, a little yellow ochre gold, a little burnt sienna. And let's just come in and make a little bit more definition roof lines and the bottom above that white line. You want to get that rust above that little roof cutout there, and then bring it up, something like that. Now we're going to use the paper towel and take a bunch of that out of there, because we don't want it to have too hard a line. And now, while I'm thinking of it, I've got that dark color. Let's come in and restate that shadow from the cupola and restate the interior of this barn door. It can be dry brush, have a little bit of texture, little tiny bit of light showing through there. That's all good. Okay. This looks like too much of a straight line, so I'm gonna break it up a little bit. There. And I like the softness over here, so I'm not gonna go crazy. Except I'm gonna get some good strong dark right underneath here. Okay. Now, the shadow in the road needs a little something something. So I'm just coming in on the right hand side of the light spots and just doing these little, just a dance on the paper. And then I'll come in with a wet brush and soften up some of them. So we've used the wet brush technique, blotting a little bit out with paper towel. You get the idea. The tracks now lead in. I don't want them too dark, but I want you to feel like you need to get into the barn. All right. We have this shadow coming off of the tree and going up the hill. And I will, there. All right, and I'm gonna put this tree in. I'm not gonna think too much about it. I'm just gonna touch very softly with the brush. Sometimes dragging and skipping, missing spots. Broken line is your friend when you're making a tree. And this is a winter stick tree, so it's fairly straightforward. And it's backlit, so I just used a cool color. then maybe you want to throw a little water at that, just soften up some of the edges of those. And right at the horizon, I'm going to come in with some more of this dark. It's actually drier than I thought it was. And I'm going to take some of that out of there. And I'll restate some of it. Something like that. Okay. I think the last thing we have to do is I want to darken up that mountain just a tiny little bit. So I'm going to go back to my bigger brush. And I've got this lavender kind of color that's made up from teal and ultramarine and a little bit of red so that it's grayed down. And I'm just going to come in and just do the same thing. Just drop that. I want it to be cool and I want it to be darker, because ultimately what I want it to do is push that edge of the barn closer to us. So I don't want to have a lot of detail back here. In fact, I want very little. I'm going to probably have to restate the tree. It's okay to come in here with a little bit of water too to vary the tone of the mountain. It doesn't want to be all one tone. Let it get lighter as it gets down, especially since we have that warm down there. Just drag the water down. Somewhere like that. Okay, now do you notice the barn, even though it's dark and cool, is pushed forward by the mountain? We can even drop in a bit more. All right, I want to have a little bit more definition between this little road and the rest of the grasses, so I'm mixing up a little yellow ochre gold and a little bit of diox purple. And I'm going to come in with the yellow ochre gold throughout this whole area, very lightly on the brush. I am not putting a lot of weight on the paper. I'm just letting it flow off this warm tone. Leave plenty of gaps. There's the sunlight striking it, something like that. Then I can grab some of that little bit of purple that I mixed up and closer to the barn, throw some of that into that wet paper, and then drop it in a couple of spots. Doesn't have to be crazy. Just flick out that water. Even dry a couple of spots. That'll help get some of that texture you want. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, cooling down the color a little bit. Something like that. And even coming out from the barn doors, put a little bit in here, just for visual interest on that lead in. And then we'll just do that. All right. Yeah, I think we're there. I was going to restate some stuff with white gouache, which I would do here, but I don't mind it. And I do need to put in, I see something now I got to fix. I need more shadow color underneath the eave of this little arch that's here. There. I'm just softening up the edges of it a little bit.